Now, the big topic that is on every collector's and investor's mind, which is market manipulation, which is one of the more discussed things happening right now in the Pokemon TCG world. Now, I usually don't like to go into that, oh, is something being manipulated or are cards being manipulated? I usually like to steer clear away from that. But to be honest, when I take you through some of the data points in today's video so you can actually see what's going on in the market, I think you can see that clearly there's some real shifts in the market happening with some almost really strange movements that just don't seem natural or organic. And I think a lot of people are just waking up to the fact that, wow, we're almost in this like crypto rug pull era of Pokemon. And I have to admit that this is probably the worst time to be involved within the... It's the worst time to be involved in the Pokemon hobby. This hobby has had its kind of flaws over the years, right? I mean, you have had moments where, all right, Evolving Skies was rising, oh, there was no reprints, okay, and all these kind of dramas happen within the hobby. But I think what's going on now is the accessibility issues for collectors, the not being able to get products at retail price. We've just heard that a lot of even retail stores are now going to be selling at market value, which is just absurd to see how Pokemon cards are moving and what kind of trajectory they're on. It doesn't seem like it's going to be slowing down quite soon because there's just so much hype and momentum. And not only that, there's so many people entering the hobby. If you are involved in this hobby, you have no idea how many people are entering. And you can probably see that when you try get product. It's pretty obvious. If you go walk into a store, the amount of Pokemon products that are available are very little, okay? And that's just because there's so many new fans entering and people are just hearing like, whoa, look at the kind of gains that could happen. And not only that, right? A lot of people in the Sword and Shield era who left are looking at some of their items that they kind of were like, wow, if I kept some of those cards during that era and I didn't sell or I didn't think it was just a hype little phase, wow, look at some of the prices they would be getting. So now they're getting more invested for the Scarlet and Violet era because they're realizing, hey, maybe these cards are actually going to be worth something in the very long term. Now, obviously with what's happening, there's a lot of kind of talk about coordinated buyouts and people thinking that there's obviously some level of an orchestrated method of how these items are being purchased, whether that's through Discord groups or anything. Personally, I don't know any of these groups, and I think a lot of people are saying that they know of some. I actually don't know of any of these groups that are doing the buyouts, but I can pretty much see when I'm looking at some of the data points that there's obviously some strong manipulation happening within the market. But I think a big question that comes up, and some advice that I can give you if you are involved in Pokemon, collecting at the moment. One real piece of advice that I think will go a long way is if you are right now in the hobby, think about collecting other TCGs, or if you're a fan of other animes, or if you're a fan of other kind of trading cards. I think now is a good time to kind of explore your horizon and don't just focus all in on Pokemon, because right now you really can't get products at retail price. You need to pay over retail price to get products. But if you're looking at other areas, kind of like Dragon Ball, or whether it's, Yu-Gi-Oh, or whether it's One Piece, or whether it's Lorcana, maybe it's now a good time to broaden your horizon. And what might actually happen during these periods, while Pokemon's going like this, there may be a little bit of a trickle down effect on other TCGs. For example, I really love Dragon Ball, and right now I'm actually buying a lot of Dragon Ball, which I can get for under retail price because I just love the feeling of collecting and ripping some packs, and it's an enjoyable thing for me. But also, I know that some of these other TCGs may also rise in value because they have before as well, but I'm not that bullish on Pokemon cards at the moment. I've actually taken a fair bit of a step back during this period, and I'm having much more of an observer view. I'm seeing some of my items appreciate that I purchased long ago, and I'm kind of now more in an observer mode. It's almost like a view mode that I'm on. I'm not too quick to purchase cards at the moment because we can see that there's just a bit too much happening too quick, too soon. And I do think, right, if Pokemon do kind of print to demand, or they up the printing demands, we could see some of the prices tank in value. But let's check this out, right? Now, the first one is Brute Bonnet. Now, these are all kind of drawn by Komiya, right? So this all has this one artist, this kind of pulling in all this demand. And you can see these cards are being heavily kind of manipulated at the moment. Here's the Brute Bonnet. Now, check this out, man. In the last month, this was a $7 card. You can see right at the end of this graph what's kind of happened with this card. If we pull it right now, you can see this is a $35 card. Ridiculous price for this card. I actually pulled this card, right? And I did like it. I think the artwork is amazing. I do think it is a bit underappreciated at $7, but maybe $35 is a bit too quick too soon. There also is a truth that some of these cards that are rising in value maybe were underappreciated for a very long time. So they're getting their kind of respect now. Problem is the rises are just a little bit too much too soon, and I do think while I love some of the artworks like this Brute Bonnet, I really think it's amazing, but I also think the rise from $7 to $35 within just a few days is a very big increase, right? And I also think this encourages a lot of people like, oh, what kind of illustration rares can I buy now that I can kind of hold stock onto? Because some people are now going to get the idea that they're going to be buying all these cards to kind of protect them because they're hoping that a buyout might happen, and they're hoping that they might catch that wind, and then they're going to be able to sell at the top of the market. And I think that's encouraging some poor behavior within this hobby, though it's anyone's guess, right? The other one also is the Drowzee, right? And you can see this one in the last months had some wild price increases. This was selling at 32 USD. Shot up all the way to 85 US, and now it's kind of going down, sitting at $62. So you can see there's a little bit of an effect of a market pullback with this Drowzee because it was way too inflated. Look at that, man. In one day, it went from $35 to $85. That is too much of a price increase for a card that, yes, it's amazing, but really there wasn't anything that kind of made this card be so incredible. There was no kind of crazy event in pop culture. There was no kind of thing that made Drowzee become this crazy popular Pokemon overnight. It just decided to rise in value, but we can see that market manipulation is quite heavy for these cards, particularly the ones drawn by Komiya. Something that's happening right this, I'm not sure if you guys have ever played RuneScape, right? So when I used to play RuneScape, there was actually these clans, right? And what they would all do, these clans would have a clan chat, and there would be this private clan where they would all say collectively, hey, we're gonna buy out a particular item, right? So they would buy an ancient staff, for example. Now these items were always just relatively regularly priced. No one ever thought anything of it, but then they would all collectively purchase this one item and they would max it out, this whole clan with huge amounts of money, and they would buy it out, buy it out, buy it out, and then regular people in the game couldn't actually purchase these items, which were just once seen as nothing, kind of similar to what's actually happening in the Pokemon market. And then at one point, the clan would all decide to drop it, and it would effectively be this huge rug pull within the RuneScape economy. Now, you might be saying it's RuneScape real life, but really, economies, whether it's in a game or in real life, they function very similar. There's actually a community of people, and they function and behave in similar ways. And I think what's happening right now is kind of like that. There's almost like these clans of people deciding, are they going to buy these cards? Now, while I don't know of any of these at the moment, it is kind of weird seeing this happen, and almost does feel like a clan of people have decided to just buy out one card, look at the market, and then, hey, we're all going to decide to drop together, and we take those huge hefty profits where we effectively triple our money. I mean, if you're looking at Brute Bonnet, $7 to $35, that's a huge price increase if you invested a lot of money in that card. Now, the Baxcalibur line is also going through some crazy market movements. Check this one out, man. This one was selling for around $3 in November, and you can see at the end of that graph how much it's increased. Look at this. This is the Arctibax, and right now selling for 42 USD. We pull this into the year graph just so you can see what kind of a price increase this has had, and that is just ridiculous to look at that graph. Look at this, man. Last year around this time, selling for $2.60. This was a nothing card. It was literally, people would just give this to you if you bought a few packs on eBay. They would throw this card in as a way to say, hey, thanks for purchasing from my store. That definitely wouldn't be happening right now, as you can see, selling for $40. We go also to the Frigibacks, and you can see similar things happening as well. This was selling in January for $8.70, right? Now look at that as well. Shot up all the way to $32, had a little bit of a pullback to $29. If we pull this into the year graph, you can actually see that this card started a little bit higher in value from the get-go, but it fell down to around $5.50, which is pretty telling of what's happening. Now, also just to say, if you are a first-time viewer on the channel, please feel free to subscribe. It's actually always amazing seeing new people on board, and you'll be able to actually keep up to date with the Pokemon market, along with new things happening within the Pokemon TCG. Now, moving on to the Baxcalibur, which is the kind of final evolution of all these three, you can see this is also going through some wild price increases. Selling in January for $13, shot up all the way to $58, and it's kind of fell down to $53, not by much for how much of a huge price increase it had. Check this out. If we pull this on the year graph, you can see, man, this card was always selling for around a $10 to an $11 card. It was really, it was a cool card, but definitely not the value of what's happening right now. You can see right now, these are selling for enormous amounts of money, and it really does make you wonder, what on earth is happening, dude? Because on one hand, we could say, okay, maybe there's this newfound appreciation for Komiya artworks. Maybe we could say that there's this newfound appreciation for illustration rares as well. And both of those are true, right? We always go through periods of different kind of hype trains within this hobby. For example, from 2020 to 2021, it was all about vintage cards. Modern cards were cool, but nowhere near vintage. Vintage was the gold standard of collecting. And then that wave kind of passed by. Then during 2023, we had the Japanese female trainer card boom, right? That's when everyone wanted Japanese female trainer cards, right? Iono, Miriam, Lily, everyone loved these cards. And then eventually that kind of hype train calmed down as well. And right now we're in this illustration rare phase, right? Everyone wants illustration rares. Oh, they're so cool. There's almost this collective newfound appreciation. So while there may be these coordinated buyouts as well, I think one thing we also cannot forget is that we also are in an illustration rare boom. There's a lot of eyes on illustration rares, a lot of appreciation for these in the hobby, and I think that's playing out. And it's kind of, sometimes we like to think it's only one thing, but I think there's a kind of combination of things happening. And you kind of have to see, there's a lot of illustration rares going up in value. It's not just the Komiya artworks as well. There's a lot of different ones climbing in value, and that's the kind of thing we have to be aware of at the moment, right? Because we can always pin the blame on one thing, but you also have to admit that Pokemon is in such a high bubble right now, man. There's just too many people entering. And while I don't mind, I actually welcome all the newcomers because I think it's an amazing hobby to be in. And it kind of brings me into this world where I forget about the everyday and I really enjoy them. So it's an amazing thing that a lot of people are entering, right? But what is a bit challenging is that there's not enough product to meet the newfound demand. And I think this is going to change within the months to come because Pokemon obviously need to do something, right? Because what's happening right now, we're almost getting product that matches the demand from before the Pokemon TCG spike, right? So all this with Journey Together, Prismatic Evolutions, you know, the new Destined Rivals, it almost feels like the stock that we are getting for the market is kind of matching the amount of people who are involved in the hobby before the TCG pocket rise kind of happened. What's happening now is we need these stock levels to match the newfound demand. Now, obviously that's a big risk, right? Because you could essentially try to meet the demand of all these new people that have entered, but then you could have a bit of a Battle Styles Vivid Voltage scenario where all these kind of people leave the hobby and you're left with so much product that you have to put on flash sales and you know, stock can't leave shelves and all these things could happen. Right now though, I don't think that's a problem that we need to worry about. I think right now we need to make sure that collectors can actually get their hands on some product. Moving on to another one which is really interesting is the Galarian Slowking from Chilling Reign, right? Now this is an amazing card artwork, but you can see this was selling for $30 in November and right now it's shot up to $63. If you pull this into the year graph, you can see that this is well and truly going past any of its previous highs. The previous high in the market was $42 and then it fell down to $29. And of course, right now sitting at $64, we can see that there's some huge movements in the market happening. Now, also, I just want to say, if you are also looking to connect with the community within this hobby, please feel free to join my channel's Discord server. You'll actually be able to showcase your pack pulls, and there's also specific designated channels to ask the community what they think of your card before sending it in to get graded. Feel free to join the server. The server invite is in the description of this video. Now, moving on to some other cards that are also interesting, the Houndor illustration rare from Obsidian Flames has had some pretty crazy market movements as well. Check this out in the last 3 months. You can see this was selling as a $3 card, you know, $2, you know, $3.18. Nothing too wild, very, very attainable. Right now selling for $33, you know, a 10x increase. Now, obviously Houndor, Generation 2 Pokemon. There's actually a lot of people that love this Pokemon as well, especially Houndoom. You know, there is those kind of connections with this Pokemon, but at the same time, a 10x increase in the last 3 months is wild, man. And just the way they're rising in value, it's really, really interesting. Check this out. If we pull this into the year graph, this card was always selling for under $2, you know, or even around that $2 range. It was never that expensive. So you can see the Houndor also is rising, but you know, whether or not this is being manipulated as well, it's anyone's guess right now. But when we see a price increase like that, as you can see on that chart right now, one can only assume that there's obviously more things at play than just genuine interest for some of these cards. Same thing when we're looking at the Exeggute, you can see in the last 3 months, look at this, man, selling for $4, found a low of $4.39, and right now selling for $15. It is making you wonder where this hobby is going. And like I said, I think right now is a good time to explore the horizons for what else you can collect. If you do love other animes and you do love other TCGs, right now is the time, man, because you can get a lot of other TCGs for below retail and get some pretty good prices. Now, does this mean they're going to rise in value, you know, exponentially? Probably not. I think Pokemon is in a different league on its own. Pokemon is its own thing, and I don't think any other TCGs can compete with it in any way, shape, or form. But I do feel like if you want to rip packs, kind of broaden some of your horizons right now, because I feel like right now with the market, it's much better to sit back and spectate. And that's what I'm doing, to be honest. I haven't been too bullish on a lot of these cards. Reason being is it's just too expensive, man. And I don't want to kind of get burnt, because that can happen as well. And I think a lot of people don't really like to talk about that. One thing a lot of people forget is they think that, oh, if they just list the card, that it's always going to get those prices. But what's really important to understand with collectibles, right, is you only get the price when the buyers are in that market. If the buyers are not in the market, you will not get those prices. It doesn't matter what you think the card's valued. It doesn't even matter what TCG player says it's valued. It only matters when you list the card if it sells for that amount. And that means that the buyers need to be in the market. And that's very important to understand, because sometimes when the buyers leave the market, guess what? Those cards sell. And if you need the money, that's how these crashes can happen as well. Though one thing that's really important is to actually understand how collectibles grow in value. And if you're actually interested in the 5 ways and the 5 reasons that collectibles actually grow in value, I did make a video of that right here. Within this video, I look over the 5 steps that you can actually take to make your Pokemon collections grow in value. You can check that video out to see that topic in great detail. Click the video that's appearing on screen and I'll see you there.